Hey everyone, and welcome back to another World of Warcraft Legion video. So, Legion is almost upon us, and it's time to take a look at our user interfaces. Just about every add-on that you'll use has been updated, and it's absolutely worth taking the time to get this stuff sorted now, rather than having to contend with a clunky UI on launch day. So the UI is a massive and often overlooked part of game design. Your screen is the window into the game world, and it stands to reason that its configuration is going to have a large impact on how enjoyable the game ends up being, and how well you perform when it comes to various different competitive contexts. So there are loads of different ways of designing a UI. I'm not a UX designer by trade, nor am I an artist, so this UI is focused on displaying the information that I need to play the game in a way that is unobtrusive. I plan on raiding, not on a competitive level, though I do want to play with a competitive mindset. This UI has to be robust enough for effective raid performance without being a messy cluster of bars and alerts that, in my experience, end up just being more of a distraction than an aid. So let's jump in game and do a walkthrough of this UI. Okay, so I'm in game and it's time to give you an overview of how this UI works. First of all, as you'll notice, the default setup for the UI is extremely minimal. Now you'll also notice that the aspect ratio for this video is a little bit strange. Just going to get rid of these dark thoughts so I can do the rest of the video. But yeah, the reason for that's because I'm using a 21:9 monitor. That gives me a different aspect ratio to a normal 16:9 monitor. And as an example, if you look in the bottom right, you can see that I've really tucked away my minimap so that it's not in my peripheral vision that much, but if I need to look at it, it's there and easy to access. I know a lot of players would maybe rather have it in the middle underneath their character. It's absolutely an option that you can use, and it's Chinchilla Minimap that I'm using. You could use Sexy Map if you want, they're both good options, and this is just set up so that all that stuff will fade when I move my mouse away from it. It does take a few seconds though, but you've probably been thinking to yourself, well, where the hell's the rest of your UI? So, first of all, chat is gone. That is done by a macro, and I've just got it here in a hidden action bar. I just click this, and it goes away. That's something that should be keybound, I suppose, but yeah, if you don't feel like doing chat stuff, you can get rid of it, and your UI will be a lot more clean. So we should really take a look at what this is like when we get into combat. And remember that my idea with this UI is that it shows as little information as is possible, but shows all the information that I need. When I'm going around the world, this does just fine, and I think that it's good for situational awareness to have to pay attention to the world and really learn the geometry and stuff like that, rather than always referring to a map or user interface element to tell you how to get around. Anyway, I click on the target and a few things appear. So, you'll notice that I don't have any traditional action bars, and this is one of the larger changes in this iteration of my user interface. Quite frankly, I don't need them. So take the Marksmanship Hunter, really, unfortunately, 5 buttons does all of your main abilities. That is obviously a bit more with other specs, but that's the very core for the Marksmanship Hunter. They are hotkeyed to 1 through 6 on my keyboard, and I suppose I really mean the keyboard on my Razer Naga mouse. And this actually ties into all the other abilities that you've probably noticed are gone. As an example, Feign Death. I'll hit it now. To do that, I hit F, and I'm going to show you what my keybinds are for all of these sort of different, what I just call utility spells. So there we've got Exhilaration. I'd probably put a health potion there and Shift Q, but I'm using Q, E, R, F, S, and V, all with a Shift modifier, as like all of these other abilities which you don't use all the time, but you absolutely do need to have them bound, and they are going to be regularly useful in a raiding environment. So the reason why I've chosen my keybinds to be like this is that it's really easy to hit all these buttons. These are all super close to the WASD cluster, and additionally, as I said, I'm using my Razer Naga for all of my regular combat abilities like Barrage and Marked Shot and stuff like that. That's all done with my right hand, which means that my left hand is free for moving my character and then hitting those buttons. So I find that this is very good for my reaction time, and it really does simplify my UI quite a lot. And it also means that I don't have to have these things on a bar that I can see all the time. Now, the cooldowns are managed, so I will be able to see them, but the broad idea here is that these categories are something that are sort of the same on all of my different classes. So E right now is Countershot. What is Countershot? Countershot is an interrupt, therefore E will always be my interrupt key on all of my different classes. Let's look at Shift E, Bursting Shot, knocks enemies back. You know, this is where I would have similar abilities for every one of my characters keybound to. If we go down to, say, Shift V, Concussive Shot, that's my slow. Perhaps, you know, I would bind it so that my slow is always that on every character. And basically through that, you can have all of this utility stuff just be muscle memory and you don't need to keybind it. Now, of course, all of these abilities are super important and you need to be able to know when you're able to actually use them in a raid encounter. So you need some form of like cooldown or something for them to be displayed. So I'm going to go into combat here and we'll just use Aspect of the Turtle. There you go. Now that has made my weak aura for the Aspect of the Turtle cooldown appear. What does this all mean? Well, if this weak aura is here with a cooldown, it means that I am not able to use that ability. If it is not there, as is the case now with Feign Death, I know that I can use that ability. Pretty simple. I find that this is overall an elegant solution, which means less clutter on the screen. I know just as much information, and if I know just as much information while having less clutter on the screen, then I feel like it's easier to execute what I want to do because there's less visual noise and, you know, it's all just a bit more clean, simple, and you know, not sort of getting in your way. Now, let's look at my core set of WeakAuras here, and of course, this is using WeakAuras, which is a fantastic add-on. I previously used Tell Me When. I do prefer WeakAuras, it's a bit more customizable. So when we go here, we can see this is Midnight's Marksmanship Hunter set. I've slightly modified one or two things on it, just, you know, for my own preference, I suppose. And yeah, I'll put a link to this down in the video description. Now, this is a very big custom set with excellent functionality. For an example, look at my focus bar. That just tells me so much of the information I might need to know. It really is dead handy. And chances are there will be some sort of solution that a community member playing your class has created. Generally, if you go to the MMO Champion class forums, there'll be a post that a lot of people have, like, you know, commented on or whatever, that's got a really good set of pre-mades. If you want to create your own, though, a great starting point is to go to wowhead.com, go to an ability, and you can actually use their WeakAuras exporting tool to basically give you an export. So if I just type in /WA, and we will go to new, I go to import, and I just import a text string that I paste from somewhere in there, and that's how you import stuff. So there you go. My weak aura tells me all the combat information that I need to know. All of my utility stuff is above my character. Now I probably might experiment a little bit with the sort of placement of these on the y-axis, but in general this has me looking around the feet of my character, which obviously is a place that you want your eyes to be keenly aware of, because that's where fire can spawn, and we all know that fire onto your feet is a very bad thing. Now I'm just going to quickly edit in some footage that I did on an LFR test run earlier on of what it's like in a raid environment. Right now, not perfect, I may tweak a few things, but overall I am quite happy with it. I've got the raid frames just under my character and target frames. That's, you know, that's something you can really put them in any number of positions and you'll be fine. I play a DPS character, so it's not the most useful information, especially since, you know, being a hunter, I don't have a massive amount of utility that I'll be using on my fellow raid members. That is, of course, a little bit different for a few other of the DPS specs in the game, so take that into account. And there are a few things that I would like to sort of clean up with this UI. If you look here, we've got the durability thing, we've got all these buffs spawning in the top right. I should probably just hoover them onto my, you know, my class, my target, or no, my player panel here. And speaking of all these panels, this is just shadowed unit frame. So if I just type in /SUF, hit enter, there we go. Here's what my unit frames look like when they're unlocked. That said, I do make it so that my party frames will appear as raid frames under my character. Boss frames will appear over here. It's a pretty simple setup overall. If I look at player, you can see that I've got, or target even, you can see that I've got, oh dear, where is it? So one thing about all these add-ons, they have so many different sets of options that it's kind of tricky. Yeah, there, so the combat fader, that's something that I've got. That's really handy. It means that when I'm not in combat, the character frame just disappears, which is great. Why do I need it to be there? And when I'm not in combat, okay, there's a few times where you want to right-click on it, you know, maybe change your PvP flag, your loot spec, but at the end of the day, if you know roughly where it is, you're going to be fine. And that really is the crux of my UI. When I'm running around the world in Legion, questing, it's super easy to just enjoy how the game looks, because I think Blizzard's art's great, and slapping a big, clunky, terrible UI on top of it isn't really a great way to experience the game, at least for me. This is all super sort of personal stuff. Another thing I'd like to point out is just what my keybind for mounting up across all of my characters, that is Shift Space. So I think that's really handy. I don't have to click a button, it's not near any of my other useful functionality, and, you know, boom, I'm mounted. Very simple to do. And, yeah, you know, this is definitely a change, I suppose, in my playstyle. Basically, well, I've got bound to this bar, and this is a bar that will be completely hidden. It's just, you know, it pops into transparency. You know, it becomes opaque just for the sake of making this video so I can talk about it. But this really does change things. It means that my right hand is focused on 1 through 6 on my Razor Naga, meaning it's executing my core combat loop, and then any like any utility stuff is just basically bound to the muscle memory of my left hand. I've been playing video games for years, playing a lot of first-person shooters. I'm used to hitting, like, you know, Q, E, R, V. You know, V's your melee in a lot of games, Q's your ultimate in Overwatch. I've got muscle memory for all of those things already developed, so why not use it? Now, this layout may not be particularly nice if you want to use, like, 1 through 6 on your keyboard, shift 1 through 6 on your keyboard, and then execute all of your utility like this. That might be a lot of gymnastics for your left hand to do while your right hand's just sitting there, kind of, you know, herder sitting on the mouse. But I think this is a setup that really works for me so far, and I've really enjoyed using it. And I think this is the most minimal that my UI has ever been, which I really like. Another aspect of this is that I make YouTube videos, and when I think about my videos, I want it to be the nicest sort of viewing experience possible for the people who are watching those videos. So, if you imagine a 16:9 frame of this video, if only I was in combat right now, but if you imagine a 16:9 frame of this, it means there's no mini-map. You know, all this stuff over here, all the stuff over to the left, it's all gone, and it gives the people who watch my videos just a nice image to look at that's not clunky and cluttered up with a user interface. Which I think's nice, because whatever makes, you know, one of my videos more pleasing to the eye, well, frankly, I think that's a pretty damn good way to go. Now, of course, this isn't going to be the ideal UI for anyone who is a tank or a healer. You'll want more functionality, but if you're a DPS, what are your most important things? It's just awareness of the fight, knowing what's going on around you, and being able to execute your core rotation. This WeakAuras deals with my core rotation. I can respond to all situations very quickly with these keybinds over here, and, you know, past that, it's just not being an idiot and playing my class well. I think this is a user interface that does what it needs to do, and doesn't really overstep its bound. Now, in these videos, a lot of people request just me sort of pasting my setup down into, you know, into a zip file that you can extract onto your computer. That's not really the most useful thing. First of all, a lot of this is based off WeakAuras, meaning that it's very tailored to my particular spec at the minute, and this is something that over the coming days I'll be applying to all of my other classes. So it's really best just to make this yourself, but here's the good news. It's really easy to do that. So if I just go, you know, /bartender, and here we go, bartender, I'll hit the toggle a lock button. You can see, you know, I've got one bar here, extra action bar there, there's one down here that I can just bind random shit onto, and then there's this, which I will eventually hide. All you need to do is just use these settings to make them look like this. If you want your bars to fade when in combat, use this conditional right here, and then just click this checkbox, because not everybody wants to have their actual, you know, bindings be, you know, be disappeared and be replaced with a WeakAuras. You just need to do that, position them in a way that you like, get shadowed unit frames, put your different bars and things in a place where you want them to be, then download WeakAuras. Once that's done, you type in /WA, and you build your setup. It really is that simple. This didn't take me that long to set up at all, and I think it's just nice and minimal. Now, a lot of people will maybe prefer an option like LVUI, something like that. That's absolutely great, and you can customize LVUI to a good degree, but this is the solution that primarily works for me. Now, one thing I don't like is the Blizzard objective tracker. I just think it's ugly, and it doesn't really work with the style of UI that I'm going for. As I said, I'm not an artist or a UX designer, so it's not like I can make my own UI look mega pretty, but still, I don't like this Blizzard thing, so I'm going to be looking into ways to replace that. For now, I just have it hidden most of the time. I find it easy enough to, in my head, track where I am with all the different quests, and, you know, you can just hit M, absorb the information, hit M again, and that's probably good for the next 10 minutes of gameplay, realistically speaking. But anyway, guys, that's pretty much it for this video. This is the UI that I am going to be using throughout Legion. If I make any core major changes, I will do a video updating you on that. But until then, thank you very much for watching this video, and I will see you next time.